Good morning, everyone. This is Diane, and I'm so excited to show this journal to you today. This is a journal that will be in my shop. I did a previous video. Yesterday's video showed you this journal, which I am keeping for myself as a way of keeping a selection of my vintage ledger and logbook pages and vintage ephemera. So this is a really fun flip through. It has things in it that aren't in this one, although they are very, very similar. I did want to point out, though, I mentioned that I glued these metal pieces on with glossy accents, but then this plate fell off. This is a heavy metal plate, and it fell off. So I punched holes in the cover and actually used the brads to hold it in place. I did apply some more glue so it doesn't wiggle around, and the brads, between the brads and the glue, I believe it will stay in place now. And the brads are barely noticeable in here. And these are quite long brads, but because this was so thick, there isn't much of them left to stabilize it. So I just wanted to show that to you. And if you wanted to see the full flip through of this journal, check out the video that was up yesterday. But now, let's look at the journal that is going in the shop. So, this video is going up on Wednesday morning, and the journal will be in the shop Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Try to make it so people on the West Coast will be available to come to the shop if they want it. So it's quite big. It's like 7.5 by almost 14 inches. Yeah, just a little over 7.5. And it is made with an old ledger book. And I did clean the surface dirt off with a baby wipe, but you can see that it still shows its age. Not in the condition. The condition is really good. It's not worn, but it does look dirty and old, but not in an ugly way, I don't think. I think it looks good. I like it. So I used the same Tim Holtz fabric on the spine. It has 5 signatures, and I used this really cool black and white ribbon on the edge. And for this one, I used a knob fastener and put on this really cool striped hair tie. And for the metal piece, I attached this old key. So I didn't try gluing this down. It didn't have a lot of contact points because it's the key is shaped. So I again punched holes, 2 here and 2 here, in the cover, and it was scary doing that, I'll tell you. But I took some wire that I have, some thin wire that comes on a spool, and I just wrapped the key. I fastened it here and I fastened it there, and then in between the 2 points I just wrapped the wire around the key. The covers, the end papers are gift wrap. And this gift wrap is a special gift wrap that was, sorry, I have a hair in my mouth. It was printed from a textile, a painted textile from a museum in Boston. It's a really pretty paper. And you can see here where the wire is, but again, it's barely noticeable. Again, I made the Tim Holtz slotted pocket, and it's got some little bits of ephemera. There's a little receipt from the 40s, I think. Yeah, 1940. A little vintage rose playing card. This is a French vocabulary card here. Part of a receipt that tore, and this is from the 1800s. I think the other part of it is in my book. It doesn't have the date on it because that part is in my book, but it's from the 1800s. A cigarette card from, I think this is from the 40s or 30s. although it looks new. A little children's card and a milk ticket. So those are all vintage items. Then we have an assortment of vintage ledger paper and logbook papers with assorted ephemera. This is from a hardware company, Weed and Company, and it was a list for you to write down things that you want from the hardware store. And this is a shoe store tag that I attached there. This paper tore a little bit on the edge, so I reinforced it with some vintage wallpaper. Tucked behind this shoe tag is a letter to Louise on this pretty thin yellow paper. And I just stuck a paper clip on it to help hold it in there. This is a computation book from a college, I believe, and it's got all kinds of figuring on it. And there's a little brown envelope with a stamp on the outside and 2 stamps on the inside. There's this one with the Olympic skaters, 1984, and this pretty flower. Lost a paper clip. Oh, there it is. I want to make sure things go back in there so I don't forget. Okay, this is a very old ledger. I think this was from the 1910s, and I think it's from a grocery store, and it's got all kinds of things you would buy in a grocery store. Butter, crackers, tomatoes, salad dressing, bread, codfish, fried cakes, etc. Credit by cash. And I just did a little collage here, and it has a vintage ticket and some vintage wallpaper, a vintage piece of book, 2 pieces of different books, and a little number that was cut off one of the ledger pages. Now, this was a very long ledger, so I folded this up and glued it here, and I included a vintage greeting card. It's actually a sympathy card, but it's so pretty with this clear window. This may have slipped down, I'm not sure, but it looks like there's some glue or something up there. Anyway, it's a pretty card, and a piece of billhead ledger that you can write on if you want to. This came from a church secretary's book, and it has the parishioner's name and their donations. Here we have another greeting card. There's a French vocabulary card and this pretty greeting card. Happy birthday, daughter dear. And this is 1930s letterhead paper from the Towanda Courthouse, Towanda, Pennsylvania. Well, I've got to keep better track of the of the paper clips that I take off. I'll try to get through here a little faster than what I'm doing so far. All right, here's this really cool yellow ledger, and it has a glassine envelope with a vintage sticker, and inside the envelope is a game score sheet and a playing card. And tucked behind the envelope is a piece of a ledger that was written on. This one isn't an extremely old ledger. I think it's from the 1970s or 80s, that page right there. And a tally card. And this is a tally card too. And it comes with that little gift coupon. And a French vocabulary card. Here's another wide ledger page that is really pretty. I love that. And this yellow paper, I'm not even sure. It's just a form. It's a nice sturdy paper. It says vendor number, page number, terms, contact. So I don't really know what this was for. I think somebody sent that to me in a Happy Mail. This is a, there's my paper clip right there. This is a tally card. Really pretty. Broome County Technical Institute Laboratory Report, Binghamton, New York. Experiment number 7, title, Series Resonance. And this student got a B on that. Here's some more ledger, and it has a Brad, which is attaching a British bus ticket, a little blue receipt attachment from 1940, and milk ticket. There is a little, I think this is like a small postcard or some kind of collectible card. These were in a scrapbook. Oops. Tropical setting and very pretty colors. That's the center of the signature. Here on this flap, there is a tall, skinny, well, not very tall, but just a small glassine bag with a French vocabulary card, and then this little reel. It's not from Viewmaster, it's Story Views. Icebergs in Alaska. Well, I'll just tuck it in behind because that's where it wants to go. And paper clipped on here is this little children's playing card. And this sheet that says Desk Memorandum, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So that's something you could journal on. There's a belly band here that's made out of a vintage ledger piece. And then this piece layered on top of it with a piece of sheet music. This was probably from a bridal shower. I had a little stack of these. Things a bride might use or prepare in the kitchen, and then there's some scrambled words, and they're just typewritten, so I thought it was really cool. And then this is a receipt from X Lines Pure Service, Clay, West Virginia. Just a little collage here, and it has a vintage gold star. This is another of the photos. I had some of the pretty colored ones and some black and white ones that all came from the same vendor at the flea market. And this is Niagara Falls in the winter, so it's all covered in ice. I went there in the winter. My husband and I went there in, it was either January or February. It's so beautiful. And this is the Cave of the Winds. And another little greeting card. It's for a baby. And this little playing card, which is pretty old. Here's that church ledger. I have to put something in there, don't I? Okay, I'm going to put a marker in here. There's a page marker, so I know to come back. And you'll get another piece of vintage ephemera right in that pocket. There's another little glassine bag that just has a cigarette card with a butterfly and a bluebird sticker. That's a vintage sticker. There's a vintage envelope with a window. This is 1941, and I just put a piece of this tissue from the railroad company, which was written on, I believe it's with grease pencil. So it has track number 1 out of service from Mill Street, Scranton to Washington Avenue something. And then it says annulled by 19 order number 402. And I love what it says, has printed on here. The best safety device is a careful man. I just think it looks neat looking through the window there. Here's the other side of that ledger of that hardware company, and I glued down this little gift card, and it's This card itself is glued to plastic that has a printing on it. But when I glued it to this ledger, it kind of crumpled up the ledger. Can you see that? This is another scientific experiment notebook page. It has an author's card on it, and this one has Robert Louis Stevenson, and withholding receipt from 1945. This is from Officers Mess, Charleston Army Airfield. And the employee is a female, Louise. I wonder if it's the same Louise that letter was written to. This is a German ledger page, and I did a little collage here and scattered some of those vintage stars. I have gold and silver ones. The bottom of this page cracked, so I put some vintage wallpaper here. And here is another envelope of stamps. I won't open it, but it does have 2 stamps inside. And this has a piece of German paper and a little playing card. There's another greeting card and another set of tickets that are attached with a brad. Another vellum bag with a Victorian calling card. It's beautiful. And by the way, I should mention that many of these ephemera pieces and even the ledger pages will soon be in my shop if they're not already. The Victorian calling cards are there. The tags and tickets are there. I don't think the ledger pages are in yet, but they might be by the time this video goes up. So I've been working very hard on getting things scanned in and then put in my shop. So I have a few more things to list, but many of the items are listed. This is from Albany College of Pharmacy. It was a student's notebook. It's kind of like rice paper. Again, some German ledger and this New York Telephone Company bill for $2 in 1948. And then this silverware coupon and a playing card. So this ledger was folded up and then folded over. So we've got some little flappy doos here, and there's a little playing card there. Inside this flap is American Bridge Company. Looks like a paycheck, $42.71. Yep, it's a paycheck. And then this is from my local high school unexcused absence card. I got a packet of them at an antique store locally here. Vintage French seed packet label. Flower label. Flower seed, you know what I'm trying to say. This paper is actually from a ham radio operator's logbook. Tucked in here, there is a vintage bridge score sheet, and then this German thing that came with something. Somebody sent me all this German stuff in a Happy Mail. And on this side is sheep and lambs, cows sold, calves sold. So this is a farmer's notation on just tablet paper. It doesn't have a year on it, but you can see where it was paper clipped to all the other pages there. And then this little vintage note paper. This ledger sheet isn't vintage. This is a ham radio page again with a little black and white what do you call it when you pick up things when you're on vacation? Anyway, souvenir, little souvenir photo. Hotel Ponce de Leon, St. Augustine, Florida. Here is a bus ticket or a train ticket, Penn Central, and another vintage greeting card. This card was already in this journal. but I love those cards. You can have another. This one is French, this little pink paper, and this is again from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And a German ledger. This is an old letter from 1941, and this is to Louise again. And there is a letter tucked inside there. And this is a vintage receipt from 1908, right there. A German one. And this wasn't used, except for somebody wrote a list on the back, but there's no date or anything on it, but it's pretty old. Citizens National Bank of Towanda, Pennsylvania. Here's one of those colored cards. So pretty with, is it dates or coconuts in Florida. A little brown glassy or vellum envelope with a couple of little playing cards. And this is a piece of German scrap. This is just a tablet that has lines on it, and it says page number 69, and it has a couple of lines to fill in for the date, and must be your location because it says Pennsylvania, PA. Blue vintage envelope. I cannot read the date on it. I glued the flap down because the flap was kind of tattered. I didn't leave it as a tuck spot. And inside, the envelope was empty, but I put in this Johnson City Water Department from 1941. This is from Charles Trail. You may have heard me talking about all the ephemera I got from Nathan Trail and then Charles Trail. And this one is also from Charles Trail, 1921. A receipt. I guess it goes this way. This is some sort of a ticket. It says not valid unless filled in with ink, and Cumberland, Maryland is stamped there. It's got some embossing, like a notary embossing. 1928 it says, Allegheny. I don't really know what it's for. It was kind of a beat up card, so I glued it down as a pocket, and there's a stamp there. And this receipt, this pretty green receipt, it wasn't used, but it was written on the back with a pen that kind of bled through, so I thought it looked really cool. And so there's no date that I could see on it. And this is a little calendar that you would put in your wallet from an insurance company, and this is 1927 and 1928. This is an actual vintage advertising card, and I do have advertising cards as digitals in my shop, but you get a real one here in this journal. Here's another piece of paper that has the things to fill out at the top. So I believe this was a student's page notebook or something. It says assignment number along with other things. There's a collage here. This is a piece from a vintage journal that was written in pencil, and a vintage sticker, like for decorating packages. This glassine bag was coffee dyed, and it has a vintage gift card that you would put on a package with some lilies. And then you get one of my precious vintage tags from Guernsey Brothers and Company, manufacturers of Keene crackers and wholesale dealers in cigars and confectionery, from Keene, New Hampshire. I got a few of these tags from a flea market, and I love them. This one has a really cool thing at the top. Here are a few things that are clipped on. This is a receipt from Earl S. Johnson, Wholesale Fruit and Produce, Potatoes, a Specialty, from Naples, New York. Another bus ticket or train ticket, and a label for Cook's Peppermint Cordial. I bought the labels from an Etsy seller. Most of the ephemera and pages in these books I get at flea markets and antique stores. This was German, so all the German stuff was sent to me in Happy Mail. There's a little glittery German scrap. Some more tickets that are attached there. St. Lawrence Parks Commission, Upper Canada Village, adult ticket, $2.50, good for one day only. This is just a long glassine bag, and I folded up a German, oh, I'm going to show it to you, because I don't know what it is, but it looks cool. And this is a vintage French flower seed label. Another tally card is attached up there. There's a playing card here, and this ticket is really cool. Receipt, I mean, from Nathan Trail. Looking for the date. 1926. And a little store receipt from Pittsburgh Paints, Wallpaper and Hardware, Walter F. Chaffee, Ulster, Pennsylvania. You pass through Ulster. When leaving from my house, you pass through Ulster to get to Towanda, which you've heard me mentioning a few times. And Towanda is my county seat. An author's card. This is Washington Irving. This is a really cool ledger page from 1953. There's a glassine envelope and a piece of German scrap. A vintage bridge score page, the Earl Johnson Produce receipt, and X-Line's Pure Service receipt. There is a vintage milk bottle cap here. Some more of the stars on this ledger page. A little snippet of a vintage lotto card and a little piece of vintage wallpaper right there. Bridge card, tally card up there with a pretty yellow rose. Again, this page is patched with some strips of wallpaper and just a digital scrap that I had to help with the tearing at the bottom of the page. This is a really cool ledger page. This is actually from a railroad login book, like to keep track of your hours. And this is, you might have one page in here that was all written on, and this one is a blank one. But all of the printing is red and green. Looks so pretty. And I do have a digital of railroad logbook. So it has pages like that. I don't know if I have this page in it. I don't remember. But there's some covers of a couple of the logbooks that I have and some of the pages. Just a collage here to help with some tearing again. This was a very brittle page. There's a vintage sticker on that collage and vintage wallpaper. Another Niagara Falls card with a tally card and a little flash card. Belly band with a little game card that says, "Of what country was Cleopatra queen?" There's a little playing card. Johnson City Water Department, and it's got the punched out part that says paid. And this is 1943. And then we have this letter to Ginny. I do not know how old this is. Another envelope with the window in it. There's a pink receipt, and this receipt from Received from AB Trail, so I don't know what trail that is. 1925. Repair on sink trap, $2.25. You would not get a plumber's bill for $2.25 nowadays. That's for sure. That's probably one of Nathan's, well, maybe it's Annie. Nathan's wife was named Annie, so that might be the AB Trail. Pretty ledger. That's my favorite ledger with the pink, purple, and blue lines. This is a guest register page, and I made this little pocket with collaged. This is a piece of vintage sheet, vintage feed sack fabric, and vintage lace. A German piece. No, this is Remington Rand Company from Johnson City, New York. Charles Trail. There's got to be a date here somewhere, but I'm not seeing it, so. Oh, yeah, that doesn't have the year. So anyway, you've seen other things from Charles Trail, and you know they're old. And a really pretty greeting card. And the last signature has this little cream or milk ticket up there from Purity Dairy. Vintage envelope. This, or not vintage, glassine. This flap was bent, so I just glued the flap down. And this is a little brochure from American Express Traveler's Checks. I do not know. March 1926. That's older than I thought. Cool. And a blue Penn Central Light and Power Company bill receipt, 1926 again. And a vintage mailing label, and this beautiful vintage card, Sincere Good Wishes. Lots of vintage goodies in this envelope. And I just glued this scrapbook paper on the corner just to give you another tuck spot. Grant Life Insurance Company, 1936. And a couple of, well, this is a scorecard for Pinochle and a paint store receipt. Some collaging here with a claim check. Oh, this is that red and green ledger that was written on. Again, the paint store. I didn't realize how many of those I put in. A clear acetate alphabet card and a greeting playing card. Another envelope of stamps. A collage here, and this one has the piece of the spine from this ledger with the printing on it. A little tiny orange juice bottle cap. Instead of a milk bottle, it was orange juice. This is vegetable seed label, and here is a vintage popsicle bag, and it has a couple of receipts in it, and this card, Lewistown Reedsville Water Company, paid 1927, Nathan Trail. Some more tickets. These two envelopes were layered together in a scrapbook full of envelopes. This lady just saved envelopes from all over the place and glued them in. Most of them were empty. So they were attached together. There's still part of the scrapbook page behind them. So I just glued them in here together as a pocket. And this has a bill from Harrisburg Polyclinic Hospital, Charles Trail, 1957. And when I went through my book, I said that was where Annie Trail was institutionalized, but that's not. That was a different hospital. Carl Ayers and Sons. So this was a little store in Penn Yan, New York, and it's just a blank receipt. This was out of an old scrapbook, and it was cut out of, very, very nicely fussy cut, out of a vintage flower seed catalog. So I glued that in. It's quite sturdy. And Nathan Trail, this was him playing on a player piano in 1925. Started out in 1924. Look at that. Ended up in 1926. This might be related to something different, but then he used this to record his player piano. I don't know how it goes, but this is just a piece of old ledger, very brittle old ledger. See, it's tearing right there, and it had some notation. The ledger page wasn't used, but somebody used the back of it for writing some notes. There's a greeting card, or a gift enclosure card. And this really beautiful cat looking in a mirror, that's a German scrap card, or piece. Yellow, clear plastic bag there, or envelope with a vintage calling card, Victorian calling card, tucked in there. And this is a receipt that was my dad's from 1972. And on the back, this is from one of the ledgers, one of the big, heavy ledgers. This was a sturdy, kind of like an end paper or flyleaf. It's got vintage lace and tatting and a vintage rose tea card or cigarette card from the 1910s sometime. And at the very back, you get a treasure trove. You get that, which is kind of nice. And this very old greeting or postcard, can't read the date on it. Looks like I can't read that part. The back, the corner of it is damaged, but it's beautiful. And then this advertising card. The advertising cards, I think I said, and the postcards are in my shop as digitals. And then this button card. So there you go. There's a lot of stuff in this. This flip through took a long time, I know, but I wanted you to see all of the special treasures that are in this journal. I have to figure out how to package it, and it's going to take a larger box, and I think I have one that's bigger than it needs to be, but I'll have to just pack it with the air pillow things. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found these journals fascinating with all of the old stuff. We all love the old papers, don't we? All of us in this junk journal world. So this was really fun to make, and I hope you liked it, and I will see you in my shop at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, December 30th. Thanks for watching. Have a creative day. Bye-bye.